Hey YouTube, Kiritoid here, bringing you all my pure Horus Yugioh deck profile for October 2023. This is one of the new decks from the Age of Overlord booster set. We'll be getting more support for it in the new booster set in February as well, but until then I wanted to do my best to do a pure Horus deck profile. A lot of people have been mixing this deck with a bunch of different engines, and I may do some decks on them, but with me I always love to try and go the pure route for the decks, going with some more generic support to work with the many different level 8 Horus monsters we have, with all of them specializing in being able to special summon themselves. If we have King Sarcophagus, a continuous spell, on the field, so you just can utilize all these many different monsters with some other graveyard support that we have in the deck to use as well. So let's go ahead and get started with the deck profile. So we'll go ahead and start off with the main deck monsters. For the Horus monsters, sadly I was only able to pull 2 MCT Glory of the Horus from my case, but you definitely want to run 3 of this card. If you control King Sarcophagus, you can special summon this card from your graveyard. You can only special summon MCT Glory of Horus once per turn this way. You can only use each of the following effects of MCT Glory of Horus once per turn. You can send 2 cards from your hand to the graveyard, including this card, to add 1 King Sarcophagus from your deck to your hand. Then you can draw 1 card. If another card you control leaves the field by an opponent's card effect while this card is in your monster zone, except during the damage step, you can send 1 card on the field to the graveyard. So MCT can help just to clear some cards on the field, but also being a searcher for your main go-to spell for the good majority of your setup on the field, while also giving you a draw, makes up for the card you sent to the graveyard, but also giving you that draw and searching for the spell, while in turn also setting up the different Horus monsters for you to summon back onto the field after you activate King Sarcophagus, and then having all those other ones in the graveyard to use. I also run 3 copies of Duamatif, the Blessings of Horus. If you control King Sarcophagus, you can special summon this card from your graveyard. You can only special summon Duamatif, Blessing of Horus once per turn this way. If you control, and also if another card you control leaves the field by an opponent's card effect while this card is in your monster zone, except during the damage step, you can draw cards equal to the number of monsters with different names in your main monster zone. You can only use each effect of Duamatil, Blessing of Horus once per turn. It's draw power, another added bonus for just the setup, having a send effect with your MCT and then a draw to make up for some of the other cards you may send from your hand to the graveyard for some of your other cards in the deck. Another one of the Horus cards that we run is 3 copies of Kabesinuf, the Protection of Horus. With this card, if you control King Sarcophagus, another special summon from the graveyard, you can only special summon the Protection of Horus once per turn this way. If another card you control leaves the field by an opponent's card while this card is in your monster zone, you can activate this effect this turn. Your opponent's monsters cannot target Horus monsters for attacks. Also, your opponent cannot target Horus monsters on the field with card effects. So more or less the actual name of the monster being the Protection of Horus. Protecting your monsters from battle and card effects is an added plus for that protection of just when your opponent activates a card effect. And then you can only use this effect of Protection of Horus once per turn. But once again, another special summon just like the other 2. And then more of the protection while the other ones provide more draw power and taking care of your opponent's cards to begin with anyway. And then for the last of the Horus monsters, what we have to work with, 3 copies of Happy Guidance of Horus. If you control King Sarcophagus, special summon it from your graveyard once again. And then also with this card, if another card you control leaves the field by an opponent's card effect while this card's in your monster zone, you can target 2 cards that are banished and are in the graveyard and either add both cards to the hand or shuffle both into the deck. So recycle power, also recycling back resources to your hand for you to use. Happy just gives you more of a fact to rely on your opponent's card effects to give you those resources either back to your extra deck, your main deck, or into your hand for you to reuse again, giving you more search power and recycle power for some of the other cards we're running. Which, to go with the graveyard setup, I am running a small Ishizu engine. The one difference in the engine, I have the 1 Agito, the 1 Kelbeck, and this is supposed to be Medora. I don't know where I placed my Medora, but I have the Keldo, the Kelbeck, the Agito, and then just the 1 Medora to also set up the graveyard with the shuffleback power and then the mill power that Keldo and Agito provide. Once again, it's just a placeholder for the final spot for the Fairy Ishizu monsters. And then for the other main deck monsters, the 3 copies of Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, and the 2 copies of Nibiru. Additional hand traps, just because they have a good way to stop your opponent's summonings or any of their searches using both of these cards. And for the fact that I am also running Crossout Designators, so they're good targets for those cards also, if your opponent were to try and use them on your own plays also. For the spells, we're running 3 copies of King's Sarcophagus. Horus monsters, I was about to say hero monsters. Horus monsters you control cannot be destroyed by card effects that do not target them. You can send 1 card from your hand to the graveyard to send 1 Horus monster from your deck to the graveyard. You can only use this effect of King's Sarcophagus up to 4 times per turn, and once per turn at the start of damage step, if your Horus monster battles an opponent's monster, you can send that opponent's monster to the graveyard. So, for the fact that the Horus monsters you control cannot be destroyed by card effects that do not target them, you have more of a protection for some of the other cards that I decided to run for the trap lineup as well, and being able to set up all 4 of the different Horus monsters in the graveyard, just being able to do so by having the send 1 Horus monster from your deck to the graveyard, by being able to send 1 card from your hand to the graveyard, gives you other cards that you can send and set up in the graveyard for additional cards to then be set up in the graveyard for you to use. And for the fact that the Horus monsters are all level 8 monsters, I'm also running the 3 copies of Trade-In. More discard power, just to draw into some of the more important cards. King's Sarcophagus is a very important card, so if you don't have the Empsity to search for it, you can at least rely on cards like Trade-In to then get into the draws that you may need for some of your actual plays to begin in the deck. With the other spells being the 2 copies of Crossout Designator and the 1 copy of Call by the Grave, whether your opponent tries to Ash Blossom you or just use a card to stop any of your card effects. I like to run the Crossout Designator to then just banish our own Ash Blossom, or if they go for the Nibiru, for that card as well. We also have the Infinite Impermanence spot in the trap lineup to use with this card also. For the traps, I run 3 copies of Canopic Protector. Once per chain, when your opponent activates a card or effect, you can special summon 1 Horus monster from your hand or graveyard, but for the rest of this turn, you cannot special summon monsters with the same original name. Having 4 different ones to go for at least, and it says once per chain, you'll at least have different options to special summon for the particular one you want. And also, with this card, if it's sent from the hand or field to the graveyard, you can set this card but banish it when it leaves the field. Working well with the King's Sarcophagus for the search power, if it's one of the cards you send off of King's Sarcophagus to search and set up your specific Horus monster in the graveyard. And then also the 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence, mentioned it before with the Crossout Designator, for just a hand trap to use against your opponent as well, or just one of the banished spots. And then also the 3 copies of Torrential Tribute for the use with King's Sarcophagus, since Horus monsters you control cannot be destroyed by card effects that do not target them. So when you activate Torrential Tribute, you'll destroy your opponent's monsters, but be able to protect your own Horus monsters, since Torrential Tribute does not target. With the last of the traps being the 1 copy of the Gravekeeper's Trap as just another card to search. Once again, I don't have Medora in the deck, but it was a placeholder for that other card to set this card face up to then use for more search for our specific cards to then send with other cards in the deck like King's Sarcophagus. For the extra deck, I run 2 copies of Zombie Vampire. More mill power with this rank 8 monster, just needing 2 or more level 8 monsters to summon this card. And also for spell negation, 2 copies of number 38, Hope Harbinger Titanic Galaxy. The 1 copy of number 68, along with the 1 copy of Divine Arsenal Zeus for the rest of the bigger Xyz monsters, with the 1 copy of Baguska and the 1 copy of Abyss Dweller. We don't go into them often since our only level 4 targets are the Ishizu monsters, but in some weirder scenarios, they pop up, with the Link monsters being the 1 copy of Dark the Dark Charmer, 1 Wind the Wind Charmer, 1 Barricade Board Blocker for the King Sarcophagus Recycle if our opponent does end up destroying it, the 1 Nightmare Phoenix, 1 IP Masquerena, the 1 Nightmare Unicorn, and lastly the 1 Access Code Talker to finish off the rest of the extra deck. And then as for some of the go-to plays in the deck, as I said before, one of the important cards in the deck is King Sarcophagus. So just being able to have the send, depending on what you send. If you send cards like Canopic Protector, you'll have the option to then set this card on the field as a continuous trap. So then it'll be banished if it leaves the field, but still another free plus off of that while being able to send another Horus monster. And if you have the cards to use in your hand to send, if you send any of the Ishizu cards, you'll have their own graveyard card effects, whether it be the shuffle back or the additional mill power of these cards. And with each one sent, the additional Ishizu card, which you can special summon from your graveyard. Off of each one, just limited for their own special summon onto the field, giving you resources for your rank 8 Xyz plays, their own card effects on the field, whether it be the draw power, the protection of them themselves, or just the recycle, depending on which one you summon. But that is it for the deck profile. I hope you all enjoyed. Like I said, I wanted to go for more of a pure build for what we have. We'll be able to make another pure build for the Horus deck with the release of the next main booster set, the Phantom Darkness equivalent sequel set with more of the support, including a new field spell and some more main deck monsters. But until then, I hope you all enjoyed. And as always, until next time, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. And Kira, Twig out.